Imagine you're stranded on an island and all you have is a dollar store. This is falling apart quickly. And you also have 50 bucks. Now you need to get off this island, and you also can't touch the water because you're afraid of water. This is a very likely situation. Well, obviously what you would do is you would get pool noodles and you'd make a boat out of them. Now, despite the ridiculous scenario, what I really wanted to do was make a boat that was watertight using a fairly cheap material and one that wouldn't degrade in water. So first I headed to Dollar Tree to get a couple of pool noodles to run some experiments to make sure that this idea was actually viable.
We got the pool noodles.
Now this first experiment was to just make sure that the inside held water, and after testing out for a few minutes, I felt like it was good.
Okay, I'm gonna dump this. How do I dump this?
But more importantly, I needed to make sure that two of these would glue well together and then also hold water. I decided to use hot glue to do this because I actually didn't give it a whole lot of thought. It just seemed like the best option. So I needed to get a glue gun, so that meant another trip out to the store to get one. So now that I was back from the store, I could finally put everything together and finish this final test. And things were looking really promising. The glue was holding really strong, and when I added water, everything was completely watertight.
This might actually work.
So with those tests done, I did some planning, figuring out what I would actually need. I decided 40 was how many noodles I would need, and I also needed lots more glue and rubber bands to hold everything together. And now just another trip out to the store to get all the supplies.
Let's get started. Good morning.
This was day 2. That first day took a lot longer than expected, but I just had to keep going and push through it.
So last night I finished the main part of the boat. Took a lot longer than expected, but I think it's looking really good.
Now, despite me saying this, I had no idea how I was going to be turning this into a boat. I'll spare you the pain of watching me struggle through all of the different ways that I tried to make this obvious raft into a boat. But at this point in the build, I quickly realized there was a completely different way that I should have built this. If I were to do this again, which maybe I could one day, I would probably approach this more like building a wooden boat, which I've never done, but from my understanding, you build a frame first, but then you start adding in pieces one thing at a time. You don't build out all of the panels of wood and then try to shape them to the boat. But at this point, I decided the best course of action was to cut it in half and just try to make the best of it and see if I can make it look somewhat like a boat. So after a couple of days and quite a few compromises, I finally had something that looked like a boat. I was a bit disappointed with the design compared to what I had envisioned, but I made sure it was holding together and used a light to check for any holes or areas with weak glue, which turned out to be a pretty cool trick. So after a few touch-ups, it was pretty much good to go. Now it was time for the scariest part. I don't have my own pool, and let's just say I was scared to be seen with this monstrosity. So in my complex, I have a little pool, and I was just trying to time it right so that I could go when no one was there. So I prepared my supplies, I scouted out the pool, making sure that the coast was clear, and it was finally time to head out. I'm still stressing out just thinking about all the people that probably saw me carry that thing over. I carried it over my head, not out of shame necessarily. I did unfortunately break it slightly on the way there, but it was time for this journey to come to an end and finally set sail. Things were looking promising at first, and then I just had to commit. And I'll let the boat speak for itself. It worked. And then it finally happened. The entire thing opened up and just completely fell apart, disintegrating in front of my eyes. Yeah, this was a bad idea. It's pretty sad to put in that much work and have it all fail within about 30 seconds. I do think that this hot glue and foam structure is really strong, but the shape that I was dealing with was just incredibly weak. I mean, everything was in straight lines, and I just think there was no way that it was going to survive with the seam just straight down the middle where I was sitting. So while this adventure was short-lived, I'm excited for whatever sailing adventure is next, where I can make something a little bit more structurally sound. So be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.